It's pretty safe to say I love Kaweco sports and have everything from hand-painted nibs to some standard stuff to their highlighter in my collection. But this might take the cake as the most unique Kaweco sport I have. This is an Urushi Kaweco sport, so let's talk about this pen. So there are a few different artists that create these Urushi pens, either as Kaweco sports or on pens like Preppies, where they fall onto the lower end of the Urushi cost spectrum. Lots of Urushi pens can cost thousands of dollars, but you can find pens like a Kaweco or a Preppy that do cost less if you want to dip your toe into the Urushi world. I knew I wanted this. This is actually made by Ajing, who's in Toronto, and she normally does Kawecos with strawberries on them, which are lovely, and I do adore them. But back in the summer, she was posting these ones with flowers that she did for a couple of friends. And then as we got closer to Scriptus last year, she posted that she was going to have a couple available at the show that were damaged because the silver had started to flake off during the curing process. And I very quickly messaged her and went, I would like to buy one, please. And she kindly saved one for me for when I actually made it over to her table at Scriptus. And I absolutely adore it. And I think it's a great introduction to the Urushi world. It wasn't super expensive. It was a lot more expensive than a standard Kaweco pen, but it was totally worth it for me. So we're gonna ink this up. I felt like a pen like this needed something unique nib-wise, and so I have put my cursive italic smooth double broad nib that Matthew Chen did for me into this pen. The goal was always that when I got that nib done, it could go in any of my Kaweco sports. But once I had acquired this pen, I was pretty sure the nib was going to go in this pen because a pen like this does need a pretty unique nib. So let's look at colors for this pen. There actually aren't that many possibilities. I did think about something like White Hole, but I've got it inked up currently. Robert Oster, Romeo and Juliet, does have the correct look I want. I do want something with personality because this is a double broad cursive italic nib. And then I remembered that I have Sailor Haha, which is Mom's current favorite ink. It's in a bunch of her pens. And looking at the base color for this, I think it's right. It shades out a crazy amount, but the base color is that sort of aqua undertone that I actually don't have in my ink collection somehow. But I think this is the right color for this pen, so let's go find Sailor Haha and we'll ink up this pen. All right, I have my ink. I'm gonna tuck these away. I'm also gonna grab some Kleenex. I don't know where my ink cloth has gone recently. And because I don't want to get anything on the lovely Urushi work, I'm actually going to tuck that off to the side. And I'm going to unscrew this. I did totally clean this with Pen Flush because this was a custom grown nib. I just wanted to make sure there were no little bits of anything. So it has been cleaned and then flushed out with Pen Flush and then cleaned with water again. So there should be no issues. And we are going to ink this up. I'm notoriously bad at inking up mini converters. But that honestly, that isn't too much air. We might just leave that and not bother to try and get it out. Sometimes I have them over 2/3 full of air. This time though, worked pretty well. So let's screw this back on. I know you can eyedropper Kaweco pens. I have friends that do it. I've eyedroppered other pens, but never a Kaweco. It's just not something that has appealed to me. I'm sure I'll do it at some point. I've got enough of them. And I do like eyedroppering pens, but I think I definitely want to eyedropper one of the clear ones, and the only clear one I've got right now is one of the highlighter ones. So we'll see what I eyedropper in the future. For now though, it's got a mini converter in it, and this is a me. I will leave her Instagram below. And the nib is a cursive italic smooth. And this is just one of the normal Kaweco Sport nibs. I didn't get one of the fancy ones. This is just one of the like standard $18 nibs that I then got a $60 or $70 grind on. But I knew it was a pen I was going to use, or a nib that I was going to use on a bunch of my pens, and so it worked out to being worth it. Really, it's a pretty standard Kaweco Sport. That being said, because it's got Urushi work on it, it looks stunning, it's super fun, and it's quite unique. And I also really love putting something fun in it nib-wise. Like, I could have left it with the double broad or the broad it came with, which I've just added to my nib stash, but I feel like a pen like this that already has such personality deserves a really cool nib, and I already had this nib in my collection, and so it was worth it to put the nib in the pen, and I really love them together. I also found that this sort of like settled my desire for Urushi. It was sort of like, oh, I've got it. I've had it in my hand, like, and now I'm okay. Will that stay as being okay for forever? I don't know. I'm sure at some point there'll be something else Urushi that I love, but for now, this is sort of like satisfied that. I've got something that I really like, and I think that helps. So I'm very happy with it. I will leave Ajing's information below. Matthew Chen did the nib. You can send your nibs to him. I get Matthew to do my nib work at pen shows or at events pre-pen shows. He's great. And let me know down below if you've got any Urushi pens. Or is it something you've totally stayed away from? I have friends that just stay away from it. And I think you just sort of have to do whatever's best for what you like in your collection. For me, sport's already something I knew I loved, and well, it was more than a traditional sport. I really like it, and I think it's really fun, and I like the little details on the flowers. I just think it's really pretty, and it's one of those, like, I get to write with somebody else's art, and I love getting to do that. It's the same way I feel when I use handmade watercolors. It's the same way I feel when I get to use a hand-turned pen. So, I really love it. It sort of satisfied the Urushi itch, and I'm sure at some point she'll release something else that I'll go, oh, I really love that. But for now we're good. For now I'm happy. And I will say it is a pen that has not left my desk. If you've been around this channel for a while, you'll know that I am very, very open about the fact that most of my pens are treated with care but used. I'm not somebody that's not going to use a pen or take it out of the house because it was expensive. My Mont Blanc gets put into a hard 3-pen case and put into my purse. So I use my stuff. My pens that are currently inked up touch because they live in a mug together. In the case of this pen, because it is Urushi and everything, I've been a bit more careful with it. It has been sitting on a pen rest. It hasn't been touching other things. I don't want to scratch her lovely work, and so I'm just going to be a bit more careful with it. It will probably at some point leave the house, but it will leave the house in a hard pen case, not my Kaweco pen roll. That being said, I'm okay with having a pen that's worth that little more maintenance for me than some of my other pens, because it truly is stunning and spectacular and I love it. I also love the nib. I think the nib really pulls it all together. I think having a standard Kaweco nib in it would be a little bit boring. I'm sure I'd love it with a broad or a double broad, but having something really fun in it is pretty exceptional. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.